I'm 72 years old, and I need to tell you something most people only realize when it's already too late. My parents never warned me about the silent battles of adulthood. They taught me how to survive, but not how to understand myself. For decades, I believed I was doing everything right, working harder, staying strong, sacrificing quietly. But one day, I woke up and realized something terrifying. You can live an entire life and still miss the truth that mattered most. So before you scroll away, listen carefully, because what I'm about to share might change how you see your own life. We were raised on simple rules: work hard, stay strong, provide, don't complain. Nobody told us what those words would actually cost. Growing up, I thought adulthood meant freedom, stability, respect, and certainty. I imagined a clear path where effort would always lead to reward. But adulthood didn't arrive with clarity. It arrived with pressure, silent pressure, the kind that sits on your chest at 3 a.m. when everyone else is asleep. Bills waiting, responsibilities brewing, and the constant expectation to be strong, even when you felt like falling apart inside. My parents never talked about this. They showed strength, but never struggle. I never saw my father cry, not once, not when money was tight, not when life slowly chipped pieces away from him. Back then, I thought that meant he was unbreakable. Now I realize it meant he was alone. Because adulthood teaches you something quietly. Strength without vulnerability becomes isolation. When you're young, love feels like a fire. Intense, exciting, unpredictable. But nobody explains that long-term love isn't sustained by passion alone. Marriage, real marriage, is built on quiet compromises, not grand romantic gestures, not perfect moments, but everyday choices. Choosing patience when you're tired, choosing kindness when you're frustrated, choosing to stay even when leaving feels easier. We grew up believing love was supposed to feel magical forever. What nobody said was that love evolves. The fire becomes warmth, the excitement becomes stability, and sometimes stability feels boring until you realize it's actually safety. There were moments in my marriage where silence replaced conversation, where routine replaced curiosity, where misunderstanding stayed unresolved because pride stood in the way. And here's the painful truth. Small, unspoken things slowly become big distances. You don't notice the gap growing until one day it feels impossible to cross. Loss teaches lessons that love never could. The first time I lost someone close to me, I realized how fragile everything truly is. Parents, friends, mentors, the people you assume will always be there, slowly disappear. And grief as an adult is different. It's quiet, lonely. People expect you to be strong, to move forward quickly. But grief doesn't follow schedules. It visits unexpectedly, in songs, in smells, in empty chairs at family gatherings. Nobody prepared me for the loneliness of losing people who knew the younger version of me, because when they leave, a piece of your history leaves with them. And then come the regrets. Not dramatic regrets, not cinematic ones,
simple ones. Phone calls you postponed, apologies you delayed, words you assumed you'd say tomorrow. Tomorrow is never guaranteed. I spent years replaying moments in my head, asking, what if I had chosen differently? What if I had taken that risk? What if I had spoken honestly instead of staying silent? Regret isn't loud, it whispers, and it stays. But here's something important. Regret can either trap you in the past or teach you to live better in the present. Mistakes shaped me more than successes ever did. Failures forced me to reflect. Pain forced me to grow. And if I could speak to my younger self, I wouldn't tell him how to avoid mistakes. I would tell him to pay attention to them. Because wisdom isn't born from perfection. It's born from reflection.
One day, without warning, life changes pace. Children grow up. Careers slow down. The roles that once defined you begin to fade. And you are left with a question nobody prepares you for. Who am I without my responsibilities? Reinventing yourself later in life is both terrifying and freeing. For years, my identity was built around what I did for others: provider, partner, parent, worker. But when those roles shifted, I realized I had forgotten how to simply exist as myself. And surprisingly, that's where new meaning begins. Aging teaches you that purpose is not fixed, it evolves. You start appreciating smaller things: morning sunlight, quiet conversations, moments of stillness. The urgency to impress others disappears, and in its place comes clarity. You stop chasing approval. You start chasing peace. Confronting mortality changes everything. When you realize time is limited, priorities become simple. You care less about status, more about connection. Less about winning arguments, more about understanding people. And here's one truth that took me decades to understand. Our parents didn't hide truths because they wanted to deceive us. They hid them because they wanted to protect us. They believed innocence was safety. But silence creates gaps between generations. That's why I'm speaking now, because the next generation deserves honesty. They deserve to know that adulthood is complicated, that love requires work, that regret is normal, that identity changes, and that aging isn't just loss, it's also freedom. Freedom from expectations, freedom from pretending, freedom to finally be honest about what matters. If there's one thing I want you to take from my story, it's this: ask difficult questions now, speak honestly now, live intentionally now, because wisdom delayed often becomes wisdom learned too late. And if my words help you avoid even one unnecessary regret, then sharing these unspoken truths was worth it.